called them and they said, oh, we'll tow it, but you have to come with me and then, gas it up. My wife kind of just went, no, you are taking this car. Here's the gas card. You are gassing it up and bringing it back here.
Hydrogen cars never really took off here in America. We've had them here in California since 2008, and yet we only have around 50 fueling stations in the entire state. I wanted to hear from someone who had actually lived with a fuel cell vehicle. And it just so happens that I know someone who was leasing a Toyota Mirai for 3 years. His name is Bryan Yamami, and he is the executive director for the drumming group Taikoproject. I got to sit down with him a few months ago to have a chat about his experience with the Mirai, and I got to drive the car myself. And I quickly found out why fuel cell vehicles never caught on. So what is the refueling experience like?
Yeah, that thing. That's really the one drawback or the real difficult thing about being a Mirai owner. There's a limited number of hydrogen fuel stations. When we got the lease, the specialist told us, they're building more fueling stations every day or all the time. And really for the first 2 years, there were like barely any that came online near us. We had one station, and it was kind of an unreliable station. So that made it difficult to refuel on a regular basis. So that's the first thing. I think it's taken the hydrogen fuel companies longer to get the stations up and running, whatever approvals or engineering logistics they needed, and that's made it more difficult. In addition, I think the technology for doing hydrogen refueling has been difficult to figure out. For us, we've experienced, the pump nozzle getting stuck to the Mirai for long periods of time.
When Bryan says that the nozzle gets stuck, it's because that the nozzle gets so cold that it freezes onto the car and you can't take it off.
A lot of times the pumps are down for some kind of technical issue or glitch. There's also issues when there's not enough hydrogen. A lot of times the stations run out of fuel, and then their supplier or however they get hydrogen to those stations becomes an issue. I think because the technology is so new, anytime there's a glitch or a repair problem, it just becomes much longer than it needs to be. And then all the people that have Mirais kind of gravitate to other stations that actually are working, and then those get really crowded and difficult to access to.
You mentioned like there was a station that was close to you when you first got it. Was that close to your home or close to your wife's work? Or was there one close to your wife's work?
There wasn't really one close to her work, but there was one, I'd say within like a 15-minute drive of our house. It's only one pump, and if it went down, basically that was it. If a number of people get in line, then you're looking at a 15, 20, 30-minute wait. And I think there's a collective fellowship of Mirai owners who know the pain of trying to fuel their cars. I remember one time I was waiting for a very long time to get gas. I finally got a partial fill up, and then it ran out of gas. And then the guy that was 2 cars behind me I said, I think it's out of gas now. And he kind of just looked at me and said, you only have 3 more miles left. I said, gotta go, I'm sorry. But in general, that's been kind of the difficult issue with these cars. Other than that, it's a great car. We feel really good when we're driving it, just in terms of the fact that it has, minimal or zero emissions.
So what attracted you to the Mirai and or hydrogen fuel cell?
Well, when my wife and I were looking for a car, and we knew we wanted to try to make our footprint a little more green, but we also kind of realized that the technology for vehicles, cleaner vehicles, was kind of changing on a yearly basis. So first we knew we didn't want to get locked into purchasing a car that within 10 years, there'd be a totally way better electric or cleaner vehicle. The Mirai was available as a lease only. We kind of thought, okay, well, 3 years, and then we can kind of reassess and see what our needs are afterwards. The main reason why we got the Mirai was because my wife's commute at the time was extremely long, and so we knew for sure we needed a car in which she could ride in the HOV lanes by herself. And the Mirai was one of those clean air vehicles that would allow her to just commute to work and back in the HOV lane the entire time.
What kind of deals did you get like tax incentives for getting the car? Or?
Yeah, as far as I can remember, there was a $3,000 to $5,000 like incentive to lease it, and in addition, it was like a pretty reasonable monthly rate, $300 or $400 a month. All the gas is prepaid, so it's you essentially get free gas the entire time. All the maintenance is complimentary. All in all, it's a pretty attractive offer. In addition, they know that it's hard to go on road trips with a Mirai, so you're allowed like 2 weeks worth of free car rental to kind of cover that, I guess, inconvenience. Between those things, we kind of thought, let's give it a shot.
So in the 3 years that you've had the car, have you had to take it in for any kind of maintenance?
Just general kind of regular maintenance. Nothing major has happened. Every 3 or 4 months we'll take it in, but then it's always been free and it's always been relatively fast. And there hasn't been any like major or anything related to the fuel cell that's needed to be done. Mm-hmm. Once I got rear-ended in the Mirai, and we had to take it to a specialty body shop, just because a lot of kind of regular body shops don't want to touch the Mirai. They're like, I don't know anything about that. I don't want to touch it. Mm-hmm. But it was still relatively easy.
So what's the driving experience like for you? How does the car feel?
The car itself is great. We have no complaints about it. Actually, we often get a lot of compliments about it. The exterior looks nice. People really like the interior of the car. In terms of acceleration, the way it handles, it's great. It's a nice, smooth riding car for being a hydrogen fuel cell car. It has, pretty good acceleration. I'm not like a person that likes to drive aggressively, so it's fine for me. Every now and then when we do need to accelerate quickly, it does fine.
Have you ever run out of hydrogen on going somewhere?
We have not. We've gotten pretty close, but that's another perk, I guess, that Toyota offers, is if you do run out of gas, they'll pick you up and tow you to a hydrogen station. We've had a situation where we nearly ran out of gas, but we're able to get home at least, and then call the tow truck. This is, I think, the beginning of my wife's great frustration. We called them and they said, we'll tow it, but you have to come with me and then, gas it up. And my wife kind of just went, no, you are taking this car. Here's the gas card. You are gassing it up and bringing it back here. And the poor tow truck driver, he just kind of said, okay. But I think that's kind of the frustration that, a lot of us have felt in using this car.
So how do you find hydrogen stations if you're not, or do you just go to the one that's by your house?
There's an app called Hygo, which will kind of show you at any given time what hydrogen stations. See, as you can see here, they are all red and one is yellow. Red is not good.
So if you're close to empty in your tank, about how long does it take to fill up the car, do you think?
If the pump is functioning, it's really not that bad. It's maybe, and if you just drive right up, if no one's in line, and you could be done in 5 minutes. It's rarer to find the pump in all those kind of perfect conditions in order to have a fill up like that. But it does happen, and when it does happen, it's glorious.
You had mentioned that you could only lease the car. If you could buy the car, would you buy the car?
We would not buy the car. I ran into a guy at the station a few nights ago, and he actually did purchase his car, and I kind of felt sorry for him. But I guess maybe they made that possible in the last 2 years. But when we got it, it was lease only.
Mm-hmm. So would you recommend this car to anybody?
I would if you live near a reliable hydrogen station. If you live near me, I would not recommend getting it.
Okay. Yeah. Cool. Well, thank you, Bryan. Thanks for taking the time to talk about your car.
Okay, now you get to drive it.
All right. And here we go. This is my first experience in the Mirai. Okay, let's see power-wise. Okay. It feels a lot like a Prius. It doesn't have as much power as my Bolt, but it does feel very similar to my girlfriend's Prius Prime when it's in electric mode. And so far, overall, it feels like an electric car because it is an electric car. Just has that smooth acceleration, semi-quick acceleration. I think if you're coming from a gas car, the acceleration is going to feel very fast. If you've been in other electric cars, it's not quite as peppy, but I think for the average person that doesn't matter at all. The regen that this does have is really, really light compared to a battery electric vehicle, even compared to the Nissan Leaf that has pretty light regenerative braking. This one is extremely light. So if you're someone who doesn't like regenerative braking, the feel of this car might be perfect for you. And handles like a Prius, which, is not great. It's not meant to be a sporty car, so that's okay. The steering's really light, like a lot of Japanese cars are. The interior styling is very Toyota, so if you like Toyota interiors, you'll love this one. The sound of the car is a little different than battery electric vehicles. It kind of sounds like a battery electric vehicle, but almost like it has a higher screeching sound. I don't know if that's the motor, if that's the fuel cell working. It has a different sound than a battery electric vehicle. It's kind of cool. All right, so really the best way to describe this car is it drives like a Prius with more acceleration. And if you've driven a battery electric car before, it feels basically the same. The only difference really is the acceleration isn't quite as fast as other battery EVs that I've driven, and the regen is really, really weak. Well, this was really fun. So thank you to Bryan for taking the time to do the interview and letting me drive your car.